Hey guys, you are watching Daniel and Gian review. Is it the first time I've used that yeah. Anyways, this is Daniel and Gian talk. I have Gian Perez.
And I'm Daniel.
And today we're going to be doing a review of Amit Masurkar's feature film Newton, starring Raj Kumar Rao. So if you haven't watched the film yet, then right now is about the time that you shut off the video if you don't want any spoilers. So I finished watching it this morning. And I remember we watched, so we did a trailer reaction, and thank God the audio went out, or something was terrible with the audio where we never released a reaction. But I was not very impressed with the trailer.
Trailer was...
It was boring. It was boring.
It did not encapsulate what this movie's about in any capacity.
I enjoyed the film a lot. I think this is the most different Bollywood film we've seen so far. Like even I mean, I would put it along the same lines as Gangs of Wasseypur, like it's in a realism sense, I guess. You know, there was no big music cutaways, no songs, anything like that. It was pretty straightforward. This is way shorter. This is less than 2 hours.
This is an example of a film that's had all of its fat trimmed out. There's just not a lot of excess. It's just that right, perfect amount. This is a movie I feel like every American child should watch, even though it has nothing to do with American democracy, American politics, American culture. It just shows you a different side of what a democracy is, the power of voting, the power of democracy, and it puts into perspective all the things that we as Americans complain about, whether that's, oh, we should be able to vote with our apps, et cetera, et cetera. We kind of take things for granted, and this movie shows the reality of certain countries and places around the world that are a part of a democracy. I mean, there's regions like this, not just in India, but in all over the freaking world, that are part of democracies but have to go through all this mumbo jumbo, and they can't even, some people didn't even know how to vote in the movie.
And for me, I think it was bigger than that. See, that's I think that's superficial. That's a superficial message of the movie. For me, it was even bigger than that.
Well, I'm talking about for little kids, for American kids.
Right, but I don't know if this is, I could see that.
It's like an intro to like, hey,
this
is how it is in some places. That's the reality for some people.
This is definitely shows the privilege we have here as voters in what we call a democracy. It's a republic, but that's neither here nor there. Like voting for us is so much easier now. I mean, because you could make this argument back in the Jim Crow days that,
well, if you were black, it wasn't that easy.
These people were going through the same thing, not to mention gerrymandering and all that other stuff, but that's for another.
Similar. I would not say it's the same.
Not exactly the same, obviously, because people aren't like having to go 4 hours in the jungle or or however long it takes to walk.
Worrying about getting killed by the
Maoists.
That opening scene was perfect, though. I mean, it set the tone for the entire film. You have this politician who's out there preaching to the people, and he's kind of telling people not to vote for him, and it was just a great opening.
Well, he was saying that he doesn't care if he wins or not. He just wants to let you know that there's a bigger world.
And then in the very next scene, Amit has the character get killed. Not just killed, but murdered. So it just shows you the intensity of the region and the problems that the people who live in this area have to go through and deal with.
And it's funny because it was a setup. It was a world builder, because you never see the rebels again.
No,
they're never a part of the film.
Not one time do you ever see them.
And
again.
I think that's also like they do that with Newton's character, where they had the little intro scene that where they show what his job is and all that, and how people didn't want to go to that region. So the guy's like, oh, well, I got like a million different diseases. I can't fly.
Yeah, I have a heart attack.
To get out of it. But the important scene for me, because it was kind of it made you think that the film was going one direction, and it wasn't really important to the film at all. It was just to show you what Newton's character was when his parents
and his family
is trying to set him up to arrange a marriage,
which I also wrote down.
The village.
That's a great scene.
And it shows, and the most important thing it shows about that is that what kind of moral fabric Newton has, and how by the book and by the letter, he didn't seem to have an issue with an arranged marriage. His issue was with this girl's underage, And then there's other stuff like she's not educated, this and that. But the one sticking factor
that she was 16 and a
half.
She was
16. She was,
and his dad was like What the fuck?
Like, we don't care.
Just wait.
Yeah, just wait. Just get married.
Who's gonna rub your mom's feet when she gets older?
And it kind of shows. It also shows like Newton. They don't expect Newton to be around to be that guy to take care.
What's great about that scene is clearly it wasn't written by an American. Amit and Mayank, the co-writer, are Indian themselves, and anything that they're writing, as an outsider, I'm gonna take as this is a slice of life for these particular people. You know, Newton clearly represents the newer generation of Indian because he's extremely educated. He cares about removing himself from the lives of what his parents had. In my opinion, he's like this new representation of Indian youth. And I'm willing to go on a limb and say that there's a lot of parents out there, not necessarily the entire country, but for this particular region, who run their lives old school, for lack of a better word. You know, just like here in the States, there's that conservative thinking when you hit a certain age, if you need to have a wife, you need to have kids, a job, a house. Otherwise, you haven't made it. And you can't just live in an apartment by yourself when you're 35 because that's just not acceptable.
The way that's changed here in the States is that the property value has gone up so high
that you can't
afford to buy a house like your parents were able to. And your dad was able to work at a factory and still buy a house and everyone lived comfortably. Right. Where now, like, you're making six figures and you're still not able. And
then as we're learning, people live together. The whole family lives in one house.
Exactly.
And so it's like, well, who's gonna come home? Who are we gonna bring home to our family? But she's also our new daughter-in-law that we're gonna be able to use, not necessarily in a negative way per se, but we're gonna have her be able to do foot massages and things like that, which is a different concept to us Americans. But I bring that up to say, you know, I watched this film and I felt very enlightened. As I've already said, it's like this slice of Indian culture, and it's really what's great about having an Indian filmmaker write this film. And it's not just for me; it's also for Indians. And
no, absolutely not. And it was. I mean, he basically says, you know, I won't get married at all. You know, screw you guys.
Which, you know, I saw myself in.
Yeah.
Not that my parents ever forced marriage on me in any way, but I have it's not on my radar right now at all.
Right.
So like if anyone ever came at me like that, I would just, okay, fine. I don't need to get married.
Right.
What is being married going to do? And if I'm talking as Newton, what is that going to do to further his own career, his own self-worth, his own goals and motivations? Nothing.
And the funny thing is, speaking about his goals and motivations, and I think that's like the key for me, the key part of the film was that what were his aspirations? His aspirations were his civic duty. Like he was so honorable that he like didn't care. Like he just needed to get the job done. And I think for me, it was like a perfect corollary to what we call SJWs here.
You think he was an SJW?
He was absolutely an SJW. He
Really?
was absolutely a super liberal in that sense because he thought that he was saving these people. It's like the mistake that we see here in the States where we're trying to force.
I didn't think about that. That's a good idea.
We're forcing our when you're forcing your super liberal ideas on these like low income communities, you know, and you're giving them money and you're trying to like build these programs and the programs fail and you don't understand why they fail. You're like, well, we're trying to put them in this, you know, why aren't the grades getting better? Why aren't more people going to college? And not realizing that there's already a culture in place and you as an outsider can't change that culture.
Yeah, and I feel like they kind of represent that in the movie too.
I think for me...
He's not aware of that though.
No, he's not, because he's so stuck in his like 100% straight arrow ways that he's blinded by his own...
He doesn't know that the
arrogance.
He doesn't understand that the people that did vote were all rounded up. I mean, he kind of got that.
He
like,
did.
Well, I don't think he exactly understands how they were brought.
No, he didn't know that at all. But
he knew that they brought them there.
He knew that they were coerced. But
he doesn't know exactly
how. But he lied to
how.
himself so that he could still get their votes.
Yeah, because he said, I'll teach them.
Right. Even though they were told that they don't know any of these people on the ballot, so many people were telling him and trying to let him know that this cause is for naught, yet he still felt the need.
Well, I think
go through with it.
I think it's important that he did go through with it. I think it's because change only comes if you can persevere through all of that trials and tribulations. And I was gonna hold on. Let's take it a step back before we go there. Do you think everyone should vote in any democracy?
No, I don't.
So in America, you don't think?
No, I think this last election here in the United States kind of proved that everyone should not vote.
So before we continue, I want to ask you guys out there: do you feel like everyone in India should be allowed to vote in your democracy? Because I'm gonna say this: growing up, would think absolutely we have to have everybody vote. 100%. You can't have a functioning democracy without having everyone to be able to vote.
And then you became an adult.
And then you see Donald Trump being elected. You see, that's a whole topic in and of itself. Yeah. But just to kind of go with what your point is, you interact with stupid people.
Yeah.
You interact with, and I'm not saying the people in Newton were stupid. They're just uninformed, right? But there are also uninformed people in this country who are too busy worrying about making enough money to support their family that they don't have time or the luxury to investigate the politics. They don't have the money to pay for HBO to watch Bill Maher if you're on the left, or Fox. Well, all the Fox News people are going out of the window with the scandals like Bill O'Reilly and stuff. But I'm just saying, like, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
Especially
time consuming and it's stressful as well. And if you're not educated, a lot of things will go right over your head. Not saying that you're dumb, but just if
you're not even thinking about it.
No, you're not. And these things these policies, there's shit I don't understand when they're talking about certain policies and how they work and how they're.
What bill have you ever read from top to bottom?
None. I've never read a bill.
Proves my point.
Yeah,
me either.
Because they're long, they're convoluted.
I started to read the Patriot Act, and I got through like 15 pages, and I'm like, there's still fucking 900 pages left.
And because
and it's just like BS.
Yeah.
Like it's just like lawyer talk.
And
you can't understand any of it.
They throw a lot of double speak in there so that you get tired and you don't read through every little clause, because that's how they sneak things in. Because it's impossible for you, unless it's your job, you won't do it.
Unless, like I said, it's a bunch of lawyer talk. Yeah. You don't understand the words.
The only people reading it are other lawyers.
Exactly.
Really, yeah.
And it's just, so it's not encouraging.
Funny that most politicians seem to be lawyers, or they were before they became politicians.
Obama was top of his class, I believe, at Harvard.
There you go.
So, but I'm just saying, because and then watching this movie, and you see these village people, right? And for lack of a better term, and they don't seem to care. Or maybe they do care, but they're so afraid, and maybe that's Newton's whole, struggle, is like, if only they could see the light,
right?
They wouldn't feel this way. But then at the same time, you have the woman who, I'm forgetting her name, the only woman of the group,
right?
Basically saying like, no, this is just how the culture is. This is how it is.
And the problem is, and they say it in the movie, is that like they're getting harassed by the soldiers. And then they're getting harassed by the militants, the Maoists, they call them, on both sides, and they just want to live. They just want to, eat. They just want to drink water, and
And they have their own systems in place too.
Right.
And the movie showed that when the elders all decide who's right here.
Malco.
That's the there's the older guy.
Yeah.
Who looked like Siddiqui, but like at the end of his life, like really old. But no, they explicitly say, I'm the village elder. I'll decide whether the dude from Gangs of Wasseypur is right or
his character's name is Atma Singh.
Atma Singh,
also known as Salman Qureshi.
So the best mustache in the game. So I mean, yeah.
Was it Salman or Sultan?
I don't remember.
I think it was Sultan Qureshi. Yeah.
Either way, but then. For everything that was serious, there was also lighter moments in the movie.
Yeah, there was definitely
a lot. Like there's a scene where one of the characters is describing a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
About if you give me $500 and you get 10 other people, and it's like that's such a common thing in the States.
Or the other guy saying, "Listen, if you find weapons, turn them in.
$1 million rupees cash." Yeah.
He's like, "Well, where do I find the weapons? You figure that out. We'll take care of the rest."
I mean, those are funny. Like the.
I mean, the opening scene when we meet Atma Singh, when it's like, at what time is it? It's like 3:30 in the morning. There's no light
and they go eat eggs.
And he's like, he just says, eggs, and they're like, huh? He's like, eggs,
which is that's a great writing technique. That's a great because it allows the scene to continue on and there to be an emotional break, so it's not just serious, which can happen, and you just like okay. It also allows for character moments to develop, which there are plenty of them, which is why I liked it a lot. You know, with the parents we already talked about, the marriage thing. You know, there's the scene with the ants.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you don't want malaria, let these ants bite you.
Yeah.
You know, which is a cultural thing, and it's kind of like
that old guy was one of my favorite characters in the
one
film.
who took a shit in the woods.
Yeah, because he was just kind of like, I'm just here. It was like, I think he mentioned that he didn't get married.
Yeah.
He was just old. And
well, that's another scene I really love too, is he was talking about his marriage and as that older perspective. And it was nice to see character building moments that didn't progress the plot, that didn't progress the whatever, but they just worked. They fit.
Yeah.
They were fun, but they kept the tone to kind of just do this
wave. I mean, parts of this film you could argue is a slice of life film. You know, there wasn't really any story per se that ended anywhere. There was no resolution to anything.
No, yeah, and
that was a part of it. Like that's how you were learning. Like there's people out there. Like this guy. The only reason why he's out there is because he's not married. He's old and he's probably just lonely. You know, and he's just there for shits and giggles and wants.
He's definitely not there for.
He doesn't care about the politics part of it.
He's not trying to get more people to vote. No. That's kind of what he does.
He's actually on board with let's wrap up and go back.
Yeah, let's leave.
You know,
and I think it ties back into the theme. For me, the theme of the movie was more of like, what's common for one person isn't common for someone else, and that there's just all these different multiple aspects of life, and if you can kind of find a foundation, a basis, a through line, you can kind of keep progressing forward. You know, like for Newton, it was about sticking true to himself, being honest with himself, making sure he's doing the right thing. I mean, because you can even argue that Singh's character was also doing the right thing too.
Yeah.
He was also trying to preserve the livelihood of his men, of himself, of ensuring the safety of the villagers by not having to put them through the voting process and potentially having them be killed. You know, so it's like this weird balance of life.
There was really no right or wrong. You could argue for both ways. And I think, you know, his point he was more worried about getting back to their home base before it got dark.
Yeah, it's a serious, and that's not to mention, I don't even know what animals are out in the jungle at that time. I mean, I don't know. I don't know I don't know. What's a killer animal in India?
I'm sure there's a lot.
They have tigers?
Yes,
tigers in
they
India?
do. Well, they did. I don't know if they still do. The Bengal tiger.
The hunting.
Yeah, there's a lot of them been killed in the poaching.
But I'm just saying, you know, like that's also a reason. They didn't bring it up in the movie,
no.
But it could be a thing.
They didn't bring up any of the natural resources. The enemy. The only thing that the movie established was we got to watch out for the Maoists, the rebel army.
And they've talked more about them than actually showing them bad stuff.
You know, almost to the point where it felt like they were just using it as a scare tactic, where you didn't know if.
And maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because the lady did say it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, was better, and then he said it was bad.
There was a lot of
people.
But
then you're like, maybe it's not as bad. Maybe they're just there to also get away from the conflict because it is good.
Exactly.
You know, I was kind of getting like some weird vibes that maybe the soldiers themselves burned the village, as opposed to.
No, they absolutely did.
As if that's what I was thinking. Like, they did just so they could move the people out.
And he said, "Don't worry about." He said, "Don't worry about the methods. Just we're here."
That's what I'm saying. Like there was like some subtle like Vietnam type tactics.
There was a lot of stuff. I mean, I think when they go into the village and round everybody up, that kind of shows like how these guys were doing. Because the way they treated the people too, they weren't nice to the people at all. They were very disrespectful,
right. Which is why I'm saying. So like, I feel like maybe they were just there to also just pass time, so they didn't have to work. Maybe they were getting paid. They were serving their time out, so they can go back home after a few years.
And Newton is the worst kind of guy to show up because now they actually have to put their.
And they have to because he is the commanding officer in those situations.
It was an interesting dynamic. It was definitely. Because
usually military would take precedence over something like that.
But at this time, I think it's a great moment to get into our interview with Amit Masurkar. So check it out. We'll see you in a few minutes.
When you're shooting a film. You're lucky if things are in your control, because so many things happen constantly. You know like you know when we were shooting in Chhattisgarh for Newton, it started raining in the month of March, which is
not raining season.
No, it's not a rainy season, and you know like it was really like something unexpected. So our schedule went haywire. You know, like it started raining at noon, so we couldn't shoot after it stopped raining because the entire jungle would look wet, you know, so you have to stop shooting. and then your shooting time is limited to 4 or 5 hours. So what do you do then? You have to finish it, and the actors have to leave for the next movie after that. So we had to rush and shoot it, you know. So we obviously had to compromise sometimes once in a while, you know.
Right.
We had an instructor who would say, like, when the shoot starts, you're trying to shoot Citizen Kane, and by the end of the shoot, you're doing Dukes of Hazzard.
Because it would just be all crazy
Yeah.
and you're just rushing. But to me, that's kind of the fun part of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you can accomplish your movie, you could shoot it. And then look at you, you're already submitted to the Oscars now with this movie. Clearly, what you did was fantastic. So
let's talk about Newton a little bit. Like, what was the inspiration behind it? I know it's got a political message behind it, right? And it's not just definitely not the masala films that most people associate with India and Bollywood in general. So what made you want to make this?
I wanted to make a political film, and I wanted to make a film about elections. I had already written another script about elections, but from the point of view of a politician's son who was standing for elections, you know, because there's a tradition of dynastic politics in India. But while doing that, I realized that there's an interesting, like, because India is so huge, and you have deserts, you have the Himalayas, you have the islands in the south, you have the northeast, border with China, and there's so many different ways in which elections are conducted all over. So I wanted to do something about the election day, because that is one day on which everybody has one vote and they all feel powerful, they
Right.
feel part of democracy. And on Facebook, people keep posting selfies of their fingers. So I wanted to do something about that one day, and I was like really thinking whether I should set it up on the China border, or it could be in an island, or it could be in the Gir jungle where there's a booth for one voter. So I was thinking of various stories, and then I happened to have a book on Bastar called Hello Bastar, which was gifted to me by a friend for my birthday. So I just read it, and then I decided to set it up in that region. So it was it was a process. There was no eureka moment there.
Okay.
Right. Well, I mean, that's good though. I mean, because now it started from an idea, and now we're here with the completed movie.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it was geared towards any specific people in India, or how has it been received outside of India? Is there or did you make it for a certain audience?
I made it for a general audience. I wanted it to reach out to people, because it could have easily been a art house film, because
right.
but then I wanted to be accessible, because the film talks about important things, and I believe in making films that are entertaining also. So at the same time, I wanted my politics to be there. So I had to then my first audience was myself, so I had to make it for
Yeah.
me. So, and then I had to keep thinking whether it would connect with people. So
Has it been received well outside of India?
yeah. It's been to around 60 film festivals.
Nice. Well, congratulations
Thank
for
you.
that,
Thank
for
you.
sure,
That's
definitely. Yeah, I mean,
All right, and we're back. Hope you enjoyed the interview. So let's talk about the technical aspect of this film. There's definitely something going on that I noticed right from the get, where the use of anamorphic lenses. At first, I thought, is there something wrong with my stream right now? Because it was like people were talking and their faces would go in and out of focus. And then, since it happened throughout the entire film, I asked you when you got here, I said, was this a lens, or was this, was it my stream that was messed up and it was just a shitty
I told you right
version?
away it was anamorphic. 'Cause
Right.
Initially, I'm like, okay, it's very inconsistent. Like when it was used almost throughout the whole movie entirely, not the entire movie, but for the most part it was. But there were certain lenses that they were using at certain moments. Like when the very first scene in that lecture hall where that guy's basically explaining everything, and then he was like, if they capture the booth, let them have the votes, we'll do a re-election, and then he does the whole
Right.
Newton thing, we'll count it off, et cetera, et cetera. In that particular scene, that lens must have been extremely vintage or something, because it was really, really distorted at the
Right.
ends, and there was only small bits and pieces of that lens that would go into focus. So they were cleverly framed, so they were always in those pockets.
Right.
And I was thinking, okay, was this a production thing in terms of budget? They didn't have enough money to rent a good anamorphic lens. Maybe they can only use the cheap ones. I'm not sure. Or was it an artistic way? Because you could make the argument that like their lives are distorted and only there are filmmakers out there who could do that.
I mean, might be wrong. I think that'd be a stretch, but well, I mean, I could talk about aspect ratios, but back before, every movie was a 4:3 aspect ratio. So like the TV you had before you got your HD TV,
The full screen TV.
yeah, before you got the widescreen was what they used to call it before. Every movie was 4:3, but once people started getting TVs and they had the same aspect ratios, people stopped going to the movie theaters.
Because they're like, well, I could just watch it at home.
Exactly.
Why do I need to go?
Even though the television programs at that time were not very good. So the film industry tried to combat that by doing, what was it called? You called the
Anamorphic cinescope.
the cinescope, where they made this huge long screen that's a rectangle. It went from a square basically to a rectangle.
So, and I'll put some graphics on here. Square is 166 or 133. That's the golden ratio. That's the original. And then it bumped out to 235, 255 for CinemaScope, which is like extremely wide. And the way they used this was an actual, they basically put a projector lens where you can do that now. And it would just make the image like extremely stretched out. And so you'd have a long, vast, wide angle. And then, that's anamorphic. So you can fit more things in the image. And there's a variety of reasons why you would use an anamorphic lens. There's aesthetic purposes because it gives you that feeling too of like this is kind of old, vintage, because that's what was used a lot in the 70s and stuff. But it's still used today. Again, we'll make a more in-depth video where we'll rent a lens, an anamorphic lens. We'll shoot some stuff with it, and you'll learn some stuff. But I enjoyed the visuals. I enjoyed the editing. I thought the colors were good. I thought the acting was great.
Yeah.
I really felt like Newton was Newton. I didn't feel like, oh, here's an actor playing Newton. I believed it 100%.
No, it was a great performance. How did you feel about the interval sequence?
I thought it was stupid. A movie's an hour and 40 minutes. You don't deserve an interval or an intermission card. You just cut from that one scene that it was to the next scene of those two people walking.
When I saw it, I was kind of confused. Like, why is this?
If I was in a movie theater and it was an interval for literally 5 seconds, I'd be annoyed.
Yeah.
Because it did more damage as me as a viewer than anything else.
Yeah,
it took me out of the movie.
That's something like maybe if we'd have watched the film before interviewing Amit, we could have asked him. But it seemed, I saw it and I was like, huh, because it just jumped right back in.
You wouldn't have noticed.
So for you guys that actually went to the theater, was that a break where you could go to the bathroom for 15 minutes and come back? Which is odd for such a short movie.
It's a short movie. It makes sense.
Or did interval mean something different? That's the other thing.
And that maybe that's what it was. Let us know in the comments. Maybe I misinterpreted it. But right now, I got to say that was
because when I saw it, I was like, this is weird. Is this an intermission? But then the scene didn't feature any of the leading characters in it.
The very next scene.
Yeah, the very next scene didn't.
Well, it flowed. I thought there was going to be a time jump.
Okay.
Because when you see interval, usually there is a time jump.
I mean, maybe that's what that meant, though, was like, this is happening concurrently with what's going on. I mean, it wasn't clear to us anyways, but I figured because the only reason why I make that conclusion is because the people in the next scene were not the main actors. It was like the most screen time you saw of the supporting cast,
I have no idea. I'm going to say, go out on a limb that it's just an Indian thing. Because on every single Indian movie that we've watched, with the exception, I think Raman Raghav didn't have one, but I think every other one did have an intermission / break. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it did. They all did because they're all long. There was always, and it was always like right when the movie was getting great, and then it would do intermission. And okay, it's about to end. So I definitely that was to me that was like the weakest point for the movie, which had nothing to do with the movie. I just don't, as an editor, I don't get it.
It just took you out for a second.
Was it like a confidence thing? Like they didn't feel like the audience would get this transition? I don't know. I don't
Well, somebody
understand.
wants to explain it to us.
That made no sense to me. But other than that, I'm just going through my notes real quick to see if I, had anything else to talk about.
Let me ask you something. So I don't know how many minutes after, but when Newton meets Malco, you could see that there's some sort of chemistry between them. And for me, like immediately I thought,
Love story was
is
coming?
there going to have some sort of romance between them? Because we just got out of the whole parent scene, and she shows up a little bit later.
She's educated.
She's educated. I mean, but the issue is
she's not from their like culture.
exactly.
She's
She's
villager
from,
or whatever you want
exactly,
to call it.
and she's a little bit different. I mean, physical appearance was different. She definitely looked like she was from that region.
She was an adult. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
She was an adult. No, she was adult. And I was like, okay, like she's pretty, so maybe he's like, okay, she might be from this different region that my parents might look down upon, but she's pretty and she's educated, so we can kind of get past that. But then that went nowhere, and I was glad that it didn't go anywhere because it avoided
It would have
that.
ruined the story.
It avoided that cliche because it wasn't necessary. And not for this type of movie, because this wasn't a mainstream
And then it kind of
movie
went
at all.
back at the end of the movie too. She comes back into his office. They have a little conversation, and who knows?
Well, and that was kind of connecting. That was kind of finishing that arc between them too, because she leaves abruptly when they do the fake attack to get him out of there, which I thought was, this guy wants to get out of here so bad that now he's gonna fake an attack. Like,
And that's
allowed.
what- and that's what he
somebody
does.
messes up by saying, "Where's the curry?"
Yeah,
what
on the
happened to all
radio.
the curry?
Which is funny. I agree that there was no love story. I'm glad that there was no love story. No, I have nothing else to say really. I mean, I think the other things I have written down are like just lighter moments that we kind of briefly touched upon, the ant things, the zombie when he was gonna do the zombie movie.
Zombie, no zombie.
The zombie. That was hilarious. I really enjoyed that card scene that the old guy was playing with Newton, where he was like, "Oh, you're a this card, and then you're a Joker," and which I have to say again, great writing. It was exposition without it being exposition,
Right?
Because he was clearly talking about Newton.
Yeah.
I mean, he was calling Newton a Joker. I mean, the character wasn't calling him, but the writer was in that moment, saying that he was a Joker. And then,
This whole thing is like nobody out there takes you serious.
Yeah, that's what I'm
you
saying.
And I feel like you're either refusing to accept that, which I was brought up when he's like, your parents must be wealthy or important, right? For you to talk to the general that way, and he just kind of blew it off, And I don't think that he didn't realize what the guy was telling him, like, you're not.
Yeah, but see, I related. I think maybe that's why I enjoyed it so
totally
much too.
a Daniel move, because you
I
totally would have overshot your boundaries,
I relayed,
and you'd end up in a neck brace.
I related to that a lot because there was one line in particular, and I wrote down the whole thing. I'm not going to say it all, but it was that first conversation that Newton had with the voting guy, and I'll end with this, and I'll give my rating after this. So it was about 10 minutes in, and he's having a tea or something with the guy at a sit-down lunch, and the guy asked Newton, "Do you know what your problem is?" And Newton says, "My honesty," which is something that I currently feel still. Like, I feel like that is my problem, because with honesty, people are thinking, well, me, like, oh, I'm an asshole because I'm too honest. And the guy said, no, it's not your honesty. It's your arrogance of your honesty. It's because you think that you're being so honest.
Right.
That's the problem. That you're the guy who's like, all right, I'll be the honest guy. And I've noticed lately, actually, since we kind of started doing this podcast, that I've kind of like stopped doing that. I've kind of just kept my mouth shut. And so now I'm starting to see, like, there's certain people, I'm not going to say names, but there's certain people out there that we know that always like to boast about their honesty.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've never done, is I've never been on Facebook as like, oh, I'm the guy, I'll just say things, and that's my problem.
Right.
But that line, the arrogance of your honesty is your problem, really rang true to me, because I see myself in Newton a lot. Not that I'm going to go out into the jungles and get votes, because I won't.
Yeah,
I'm
too
not
much of a pussy for that.
Absolutely. I would have been the guy like, oh, I have bubble guts, I can't make it. I have a doctor's note. That would have been me, 100%.
I don't even think you would have shown a doctor's note.
I wouldn't even have shown up to that meeting.
Shit right in front of him, like
thrown up, just
Yeah.
throw my hand down. I'm crazy. You don't want me. But so it's great dialogue. And to finish the point, he said, Newton, your honesty is not doing the world a favor. It is expected. Honesty makes the heart feel lighter, less burdened. And then he goes on and on.
like
I think
it's
that's
selfish.
It is, and so I'm saying.
And I think that goes back to the point that I made at the beginning about him being an SJW and him, like, the problems that we have with liberals here right now in the United States. And that was the overall connection I got. That was the biggest connection more than anything else to what we're going through right now in the United States and the culture that we're going through, with this whole Me Too thing, along with just everything that's going on with our president, so on and so forth.
And there's a spectrum here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's like you can't blanket and say every liberal is a problem.
No.
It's just because I would look at Newton. I don't know how you look at him, but I didn't see the SJW. But now that you say, I'm like, okay, I can see it. But he's not the extreme aggressor, in my opinion.
No.
He's not there championing on the streets. He's doing his job.
Yeah.
And his job means, hey, man, that means we're going to go vote today. That doesn't mean we're going to stay in this base. That means we're going to go get the job done. And so, I in terms of intentions and being an SJW, I think that's where we can make the argument. But we can both agree he was doing his job first and foremost.
Absolutely.
So for me, I think I gave Three Idiots a 9.5 out of 10. So I'll give this one a 9.6 out of 10 since I said it was better than Three Idiots. Different movies though, not a comparison. So please don't leave comments like, oh, could you compare the two movies? It's just a trajectory of like people who've been following us so they can kind of see like where I gauge this film compared to other ones that I've watched so far. And eventually I'll probably stop doing that because I'm already stopped. I already can see myself.
You should stop your answer already because you're like just going on and on and on.
Well, what's your rating then?
I need to start writing down what my ratings were for the other movies, but right off the top of the bat, off the head, I'm gonna give it like an 8.3. I'm gonna give it an odd number.
Do you think this movie deserves to be nominated for Best Foreign Language Film? You haven't seen enough.
I haven't seen enough to make that. I could see that. This definitely feels like an Oscar movie. This feels like Golden Globes, like those kind of movies where it's a lot of stuff
movie
that I probably wouldn't watch. But this is odd for me. I almost compared this. It almost felt like a P.T. Anderson movie to me. Like it had the same kind of feel where like the story is not resolved. I'm not a big P.T. Anderson fan, by the way, so that's that. You could take that the way you want.
I hope you're talking about the guy from Resident Evil movies. That P.T.
No, I'm
Anderson,
talking Paul Thomas Anderson.
Because I do not see that comparison at all.
I'm not saying exactly the same. I'm saying, but that kind of movie.
Yeah, independent.
No. This felt more like
character-based, character and theme.
It was character, and the story wasn't really all that important to the
character
movie.
And theme, exactly.
You and that theme shit again. Get that out of here.
It's fucking true, man. I'm sorry, it is. You just made a comparison between this movie and Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and at first I'm like, no, and then I said, okay, let's think about what Gian's saying. Okay.
No, because I'm not trying to go down your fart sniffing thing. What I'm saying
Boogie Nights, character
this is the kind of movie that doesn't make a lot of money, one, and only certain people watch it, and they're the kind of people that vote for awards. And this is where, because you brought it up.
Well, we're making that assumption. We don't know how it was in India. We genuinely can't say that.
You're right. Yeah,
if this were made by an American,
I'm not saying this is as a bad thing. I'm just saying that this is definitely. I feel like it's got a limited audience. It's got a specific
that's the thing.
audience.
I don't know in India.
No.
We can look at the box office.
This is all an assumption. I mean, my assumption is that this movie,
assuming if this were,
this movie did not make as much money as Tigers in the High did.
Absolutely not. No,
and Tigers in the High's opening weekend, this movie did not make as much.
No, I agree with you. I'm not arguing with you. Obviously, we read articles about how last year shot. We even talked about Amit about how this was the rise of like independent cinema. And independent films were making more money than Bollywood movies. And they thought maybe that there was this trend that they would be switching spots. But my point is, though, I see what you're saying if it were an American movie, 100%. Because this is definitely geared towards indie audiences in an American sense.
Right.
In India, though, I really, really can't say.
No, we're
is
not
this
there.
and ask us, let us know.
You guys, you could tell us.
Is this an indie film in India, or is this, obviously it's not a blockbuster. We can all agree it's not a blockbuster. Right. But this might have shown at every single theater.
Yeah.
You don't know. I don't know. So I don't.
Well, no, I mean, possibly. I mean, the guy that stars in it, he seems to be in a million mainstream movies. Rajkumar Rao has been featured in a bunch of other movies that we've looked at. Maybe he hasn't been the star, but he's been in them. So,
Yeah, I'm saying I agree with you to an extent, but we can't go full fledged and say this is how it is.
That's just a complete 100% assumption.
6 months ago, we would have easily been able to say that.
Absolutely.
But
I've been confident about it. Yeah.
Thanks to reaction videos and stuff, we're kind of like, I wouldn't even say we're holding back. I just think we're like being honest and real. Like,
I-
all right, we don't know
At the end
about
of the day,
this shit.
at the end of the day, it's kind of like this. I think you would definitely watch this again.
Me, 100%.
I don't know if I'll watch this again. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
I think you would watch it again if you were doing a movie about voting in the jungle and you
if
needed a reference.
I need a reference about voting in the jungle, absolutely. But other than that, you know, it was, you know, what I appreciated most about it, more than anything else, was the length. It was that, and not, I don't mean that like
short, sweet, to the
like
point,
he kept,
in and out.
That's
and
the
that's
most
it.
impressive thing is that in less than 2 hours, because we have blockbusters now that are going longer than 2 hours. So I mean,
Every Marvel movie now is over 2 hours.
Star Wars was 2.5 hours. I mean, so on, almost 3 hours. He was able to convey his message, and maybe it was a budgetary thing, so he had to. But like you said at the beginning of the cast, trim the fat and just gave us what we needed to see.
And we don't know how much shit was left on the cutting room floor. I mean, we talked about in the interview about how he had to film certain scenes in the rain.
Yeah.
Or he couldn't film because of the rain.
Right,
'Cause
exactly.
He showed up and there was no rain in the forecast, and all of a sudden they were in a monsoon, you know? So there could have easily been stuff that was cut out. But this is one of those movies where I feel like
That was a good thing.
I'd love to read the script because I'm curious to know what changed.
Right.
But I also feel like a lot of these things could have came out on set just by virtue of being with these people.
Right.
They were fun and stuff.
And you guys know the drill. If you're not subscribed already, we know a lot of you aren't. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Also smash the like, leave comments, let us know what you think. We're going to review Pink next. Either 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks from the release of this one, maybe a week, but let's just say 2 weeks from now. We're going to try to ramp up and review something every week. It's just hard with our schedules at the moment. But that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.